The rain was tapping the window behind him like it had something to say. Trenton Miles slid a blue folder across the city conference table like it was a bar tab he didn't want to pay. The room was cold, overly lit, and quiet except for the clock ticking behind him. Steady, smug, like it knew something I didn't. "We appreciate your years of service, Mr. Carr," he said without looking at me. "But as part of the city's budget realignment, your position's been marked for elimination. The severance package is outlined inside. We'd need your signature by Friday." I looked at him. Young, maybe 35, with that Atlanta consultant shine, tight haircut, expensive shoes, voice like he practiced empathy in front of a mirror. "My name's Wesley Carr. I'm 61. I've worked for Ashford Water Facility for 31 years. In 21 days, I'd be eligible for my full pension, 87 grand and lifetime health care." He nodded, like that was just background noise. "This is not personal. It's administrative." That word again. Like my job was a spreadsheet cell they could delete without consequence. I didn't touch the folder. Just reached for my thermos. Still warm. Helen used to fill it every morning before she passed. She always said strong coffee fixed everything but death. I stood up slow, no theatrics. I've carried pipe wrenches heavier than that moment. "Well," I said, "I guess I'll read it over. Appreciate the clarity." He blinked. Maybe he expected anger, maybe tears. But you learn, in this kind of work, how to bleed slow and quiet. I walked out, folder under my arm like a takeout menu I wasn't planning to order from. The hallway smelled of ammonia and budget cuts. I passed faded photos of long-retired mayors, the flickering exit sign, the vending machine with a broken Diet Coke button. Outside, the rain was colder than I expected, but I didn't flinch. Never cared much for umbrellas, anyway. Back in my truck, my 04 F-150 with a cracked dash and Helen's tree-shaped air freshener still swinging from the rearview, I sat a moment. Listening to the rain, to nothing. 31 years, and that's how they closed the door. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The rain let up by the time I pulled into my driveway. The sky was still gray, the kind of overcast that makes everything feel like a hospital waiting room. I sat in the truck for a while. Engine off. Thermos empty. The folder Trenton gave me sat on the passenger seat like a wound I wasn't ready to look at yet. The house felt colder than usual when I stepped inside. Quiet, too. Not just from the lack of sound, but the kind of quiet that used to be filled by Helen's voice, or her humming when she made breakfast on Sundays. Her photo was still on the mantel. Same one from our trip to Yellowstone. She was wearing that ridiculous sun hat she'd bought at a gas station outside Billings. I remember telling her it made her look like a tourist. She said, "Wesley, I am a tourist." That's the point. I sat down at the kitchen table, same one we'd bought at Sears in '94, and opened the folder. Severance, 6 weeks pay. Health coverage, 3 months continuation. Non-compete clause, I wouldn't be allowed to work for any municipal or private water utility in the state for a year. I laughed. Bitterly. 31 years of breaking frozen lines in January, crawling under pump stations at midnight, and getting called in every damn Thanksgiving, and they wanted me gone before my pension kicked in. I should have seen it coming. 3 other guys had disappeared in the last year. George McClellan from Systems, Eleanor Brooks from Compliance, and Jesse Hale, who'd trained me when I first started. Each one let go under budget adjustments. No parties. No gold watches. Just gone. I remember asking Eleanor what happened. She just said, "City math, Wes. They started subtracting people." Maybe I didn't want to believe they'd do it to me, too. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Carr," the voice said. "This is Paula Kramer from HR. Just checking to see if you had any questions about the separation paperwork." I stared at the wall a moment before answering. No questions. Just reading. There was a pause. Then softer she added, "You were always good to work with, Wes. I'm sorry this happened the way it did." I didn't say anything. I just hung up. The truth was, I wasn't mad at her. She wasn't the one making decisions. But it still stung hearing that kind of sadness from the same people who sent me a pre-written termination letter with my name autofilled at the top. I spent the rest of the evening in the garage, cleaning tools that didn't need cleaning. My hands needed something to do. Anything but signing that damn paper. At midnight, I finally called my nephew. "Reed, it's Uncle Wes. I've got a situation I need to run by you." He's a labor lawyer out in Springfield. We don't talk much, but he came to Helen's funeral, and he left his card on the table with 3 words, "Call me anytime." It was time. Reed picked up on the second ring. "Uncle Wes, everything okay?" "Not exactly," I said. "I got let go today. Budget cuts, they said. 21 days before my pension kicks in." There was silence on the other end. "Jesus," he finally said. "You still at Ashford Water?" "Not anymore." I could hear papers rustling in the background. He was always working, even during holidays. Helen used to call him the machine in khakis. "You have anything in writing?" "Folder full of it," I said. "Severance offer, non-compete, all nice and tidy. Can you scan it and send it over tonight?" "Yeah." He paused again. "Was anyone else let go recently?" "Couple names come to mind. George McClellan last November. Eleanor Brooks in spring. Jesse Hale just after that." "How long were they with the city?" I did the math in my head. George? Over 25 years. Eleanor about 28. Jesse? 32. Reed let out a low whistle. "Any of them close to retirement?" "Every one of them. Now that you mention it, yeah." That was the first time it really hit me. I wasn't the exception. I was part of a pattern. "Uncle Wes," he said, voice sharpening. "Send me everything. Employment contract. Severance terms. Anything about pensions or retirement benefits. And if you've got your old employee handbook, don't toss it. Still have it. Somewhere in the attic. Good. And don't sign anything. Especially not that non-compete." After I hung up, I went looking for the handbook. It took me 30 minutes, 2 cobwebs, and 1 bruised knee, but I found it, a thick white binder labeled City of Ashford Employee Policy Manual, revised 2007. Flipping through it felt like paging through a past life. My initials were still in the margins from back when I'd been on the safety committee. And then, in section 5.3, it jumped out at me. No employee within 30 calendar days of pension eligibility may be terminated for reasons other than documented cause. Termination for restructuring purposes within this window constitutes a breach of contractual retirement terms. My breath caught. There it was. In black and white. A clause I hadn't thought about in years, one they must have hoped I'd forgotten. But I hadn't. I scanned everything that night and emailed it to Reed. The subject line was short. "You were right. I didn't sleep much. Not from worry. From clarity. They thought I'd go quietly. That I'd accept 6 weeks' pay and vanish like the rest. But I built half the backbone of that city with my hands. I trained new hires, fixed systems no one else understood, and kept clean water flowing through every pipe in Ashford for 3 damn decades. And if they thought I was just going to walk away, they were about to find out who I really was." Reed called me back the next morning at 6:45 sharp. I was already up. Hadn't really slept. "Uncle Wes," he said, voice alert and clipped. "They screwed up. Big." He didn't wait for me to respond. "That clause you found in the handbook? It's enforceable. It was ratified by City Council back in '07, meaning it's not just policy, it's part of your employment contract. If they terminated you for anything less than documented misconduct, they breached it." I took a sip of coffee. It tasted better than it had in weeks. "They'll say it's restructuring," I muttered. "They always do. They'd need to prove it's not targeted." And that's where it gets interesting. He'd already been digging. He'd pulled city employment records, publicly available if you know where to look, and found something worse than we'd guessed. 8 employees, Wes. In the last 12 months, all over 55, all terminated within 60 days of retirement milestone eligibility. Every single one marked as restructuring. And no backfilling of positions, which means the jobs were either dissolved or quietly reassigned. My jaw tightened. Who else? He read off names I knew: Cynthia Kells from Dispatch, Arnold Wexler from Field Maintenance, even Donnie Harrow, who used to share a thermos with me on night shifts. This wasn't trimming fat. This was strategic elimination. They're saving on retirement payouts by cutting people off right before the trigger date, Reed said. It's clean on paper, but once you zoom out, it stinks. I looked down at the kitchen table. Same place where Helen and I used to play cards, same place I'd taught my granddaughter how to tie her shoes. What do we do now? I asked. Reed didn't hesitate. We build a case. First, we gather documentation. Internal emails, performance evaluations, memos about the budget. Anything that shows this wasn't random. They haven't shut off my work login yet, I said. I can get into my city email through the VPN. Then you've got until they remember to lock the door. That afternoon, I drove to the public library. Ashford's VPN wouldn't let me in from home, and logged in on a public terminal using my old credentials. 31 years of loyalty, and the password was still just WesC 1972. I didn't have much time. I opened my inbox and searched for anything from Trenton Miles, the consultant who'd slid me the pink slip with a smile. Then I searched for restructuring, budget, pension, and a few key names: Donnie, Eleanor, George. Emails popped up. Internal memos forwarded to department heads. Budget spreadsheets. A few subject lines that sent chills down my spine. Employee reduction, suggested timeline before Q2 obligations. Finalize severance before vesting dates. Legacy staff forecast, cost impacts. I started printing. Fast. The librarian gave me a look, but I nodded and kept going. By the time I left, I had a manila folder thick with paper. I'd used my own gas, my own money, my own time, but I had the truth. That night, I called Donnie Harrow. He sounded surprised to hear from me. Wes, you okay? Not really, I said. But I think I know why they got rid of you. And I think you're not the only one. He was quiet for a long time. Then, where do I sign? By Tuesday morning, Reed had everything. I dropped the documents off at his office in Springfield, 4th floor of a downtown building that smelled like carpet glue and printer toner. His assistant, a no-nonsense woman named Shayna, took one look at the folder and said, "You just gave us ammo." I liked her already. Reed spread the printouts across a long glass conference table. "Look at this language," he said, pointing to one of the emails. "Restructure timelines relative to benefit thresholds? That's corporate for, cut them before it costs us." He walked me through the next steps like a general preparing battle plans. "We're filing a formal complaint with the Missouri Commission on Human Rights and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Age discrimination. Patterned misconduct. Possible violation of municipal ethics statutes." He paused. "I'll also send a letter to the city attorney, letting them know we're preparing litigation." "You think they'll bite?" "They'll panic. They always do." Back in Ashford, I started hearing whispers. On Thursday, I got a call from Cynthia Kells, who used to handle dispatching for field techs. "I heard from Donnie," she said. "He told me what you're doing." "You in?" "I've been waiting for someone to stand up since they canned me 6 weeks before I turned 60. I just didn't think it'd be you." Neither did I, to be honest. By Friday, we had 4 people ready to testify, all of them pushed out just before their retirement packages were due. And all with records clean as a whistle. That afternoon, Reed called. City Legal just responded. They're requesting a meeting. Quiet, off the books. They scared. Worried. Same thing. The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Not at City Hall. At a neutral location, a business mediation office downtown, next to a chiropractic clinic and a place that sold $9 smoothies. I showed up in my best shirt. Same one I wore to Helen's memorial. Felt odd wearing it for something like this, but somehow right, too. In the meeting room, I recognized Meredith Lawson, the city's general counsel. Polished. Cold. Behind her sat Mayor Curtis, who hadn't returned a single one of my emails since this started. Meredith spoke first. Mr. Carr, let me begin by saying we appreciate your long service to Ashford. This situation is regrettable. Reed leaned forward. Regrettable is one thing. Illegal is another. She didn't flinch. Pros were like that. We'd like to resolve this amicably, she said. The city is prepared to reinstate your full pension eligibility and provide a supplemental payment equal to 6 months' severance, in exchange for you withdrawing your complaint. Reed didn't even blink. There are 8 other people you did this to. What about them? Mayor Curtis shifted uncomfortably. Meredith paused, measured. We're reviewing those cases individually. I spoke for the first time. That's not good enough. I could feel Reed glance at me, like he wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. I was. You don't just get to pretend this was a clerical error, I said. You tried to erase people. Loyal people. And now you want to buy us off like we're spare parts. The room went quiet. Even Meredith looked unsure for a moment. Then Reed said what I think they were all dreading. We'll move forward with the EEOC complaint. You'll receive formal notice by the end of the week. Meredith exhaled slowly. We'll be in touch. Outside, I shook Reed's hand. You sure this is the right road? I asked. No, he said. But it's the just one. By Wednesday, the city wasn't just nervous, it was rattled. Reed had filed the formal EEOC complaint and started preparing a class action suit on behalf of me, Donnie, Cynthia, and 4 others. Every one of us had documentation, evaluations, emails, termination letters, even time-stamped access logs showing how we were pushed out at the 11th hour. But then something we didn't expect happened. A whistleblower came forward. Her name was Emily Rainey, a mid-level budget analyst in the city manager's office. I didn't know her well. Young, mid-30s, smart. She'd always smiled politely in hallways, but we never really talked. She emailed Reed directly. Said she'd been reviewing internal documents for months. Said she'd flagged the patterns. Said she'd even spoken to her direct supervisor, Gavin Knox, and was told, quote, "You think this is bad? You should see what they did in Parks and Rec." Reed set up a call with her that afternoon. She sent over a set of internal budget memos. Ones that weren't public. Ones labeled confidential and do not distribute. One of them was from Trenton Miles himself, addressed to the mayor, outlining projected savings if legacy employees could be phased out prior to vesting eligibility. Projected savings, $942,000. It was all there. In writing. Names. Dates. Payout avoidance strategies. They hadn't just fired us. They'd planned it. That night, I sat on my porch with Donnie. He brought beer. I brought silence. We're really doing this, he said. Never thought I'd live to see the city shake in its boots. I looked out at the yard, Helen's old hydrangeas still blooming by the fence. We're not trying to burn the place down, I said. We're just trying to make sure no one else gets thrown out like trash right before they cross the finish line. He nodded, quietly. Hell of a way to go out. The next morning, I got a call from Mayor Curtis himself. Wesley, he said, voice unusually human. Can we talk? Only through my lawyer. He sighed. The council's calling an emergency session tonight. There's going to be fallout. I thought you should know. That afternoon, a local journalist, Melissa Rhodes, from the Ashford Chronicle, called me too. I've seen the complaint. Is it true? 8 terminations. All right before pension eligibility. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. All I said was, we'll let the court decide that. By Friday morning, it hit the local news. By Sunday, the Kansas City affiliate had picked it up. They called it the pension purge. Emails started flooding in, from strangers, from former co-workers, even from people in other departments who'd never spoken up until now. And then came the news that sealed it. Trenton Miles had resigned. City Hall claimed he completed his contract. But we knew better. Curtis issued a bland public statement about re-evaluating internal procedures. But by Monday, the Ashford Chronicle published excerpts of the confidential memos, anonymously leaked. And it was over. 3 weeks later, I stood in a government office I never thought I'd walk into again. The city council chamber, 3rd floor, same yellowed paint and flickering fluorescent lights. But this time, I wasn't there as an employee. I was there as a witness. The council had opened a formal inquiry. Reed submitted all the documentation, the memos, the terminations, the whistleblower emails. Even Emily Rainey testified. Said she couldn't sleep at night knowing what had been done. There was no shouting. No media circus. Just quiet shame. Mayor Curtis resigned 2 days later. They called it retirement, but I knew the difference between stepping down and getting pushed. By the end of the month, the city approved a full settlement. All 8 of us, me, Donnie, Cynthia, George, and the others, received our full pension benefits, back pay, and an official letter of apology. Mine was signed by the new interim city manager. He'd only been on the job for 4 days. It was a good letter. Meant something. But what meant more was this. The council passed a new ordinance. No city employee within 60 days of retirement eligibility may be terminated or restructured without unanimous board approval and legal review. They called it the car provision. I didn't ask for that. Didn't expect it either. But when the new HR director handed me the paperwork and the printed resolution, I held it like it was something fragile and overdue. You didn't just save your own pension, she said. You saved a lot of others. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. That afternoon, I stopped by the facility one last time. The new shift foreman, a kid named Miguel I trained back in '09, met me at the gate. We heard what you did, he said. Everyone did. He handed me something, a rusted pipe wrench with my initials etched into the handle. Found this in the back room. Thought you might want it. I did. I really did. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of Helen's favorite bourbon, the one she saved for holidays, and I sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hydrangeas she planted. Reed called around 6. Uncle Wes, it's over. No, I said. It's finally started. He laughed. So what now? I looked out over the yard, toward the old garden shed I'd been meaning to tear down for 10 years. Now I build something. With my hands again. Maybe a bench. Maybe a treehouse for my granddaughter. Maybe just peace. I hung up, took a sip of bourbon, closed my eyes. They tried to erase me. Tried to push me out before I could cross the line. But I didn't just cross it. I drew a new one behind me, so no one else would be pushed.